the king had a strange habit. He likes to race others, and then let himself be the winner. In the face of his smugness, the ministers had to brag about him, and say they're losers. They're not worthy to race with the king. But there was one man who was different. That's the boy who fell from the sky. He just got his flying shoes, and now he's stronger than ever. He says he can outrun everyone. For such a man of no status, the king showed his disdain. He even took out his telescope to observe him. Of course, it's not that the king couldn't see him. He just wanted to show his disdain for him in this way. The boy said, he can outrun everyone. The king and his ministers didn't believe him. For such a small man, and a big mouth, they just took it as a joke. They didn't believe him. The boy got a little angry. He made a bold statement. Not even humans, or the fastest animal, he could easily outrun. The boy didn't know. There are some things you can't show off, especially if one is not capable of keeping such things. His bravado aroused the king's displeasure. Since you are so arrogant, I'll let you go for a run. The king arranged a race for him, a leopard that had been hungry for days. If he can beat this leopard, then the boy proves that he's not bluffing. If he doesn't win, the boy's life or death is not his concern. If something uncontrollable happens, the king won't be blamed. And don't expect the ministers to intercede. They too were carried out naked to compete. As the cage is opened, the panther rushes out in a hurry, as the boy thought, because leopards can't fly. No matter how fast he can run, he couldn't touch a hair on his head. He even took the time to play with the leopard, but the leopard got angry. The prey was right in front of him, but he couldn't eat it no matter what. It's a real pain in the arse, isn't it? The boy even put the leopard back in its cage. This shocked the king and his ministers. They were now convinced. The boy really wasn't bragging. The king was the quickest to react. He took the boy into his arms. He praised him for being the fastest man in the kingdom. He did all this for a purpose. After a few compliments, he began to ask the boy if he had any tips. But the boy had no sense of deception. He didn't hesitate to tell the king that he was wearing a pair of flying shoes. The moment he gave his answer, a tragedy was bound to happen. The king grabbed his flying shoes and threw the boy to the ground. And so it began. The owner of the shoes changed from a boy to a king. After the king declared the shoes his own, the boy tried to take them back, but against the strong king, he was powerless to resist. The king couldn't wait to try on the shoes. These shoes don't know who they belong to. The moment the king put them on, he flew. As for the boy who liked to brag, the king had his men throw him over the wall. The boy who was thrown out cried bitterly. He thought that with the flying shoes, his life would be better. Who would have thought? The greedy king took the shoes away from him. The boy kept crying. Before he knew it, he came to a forest. He wanted to stay here for a while. As he cried, his mouth became dry. There was a golden fruit overhead. The boy picked one and put it in his mouth. Now he was in trouble. His ears and nose grew out of his mouth. Oh, my God, I'm so pathetic. Why does this have to happen to me? All the boy could do was cry. At that very moment, the bird in the tree also ate a fruit, but his was red. Half an hour later, the bird's beak was shortened. The boy was amazed at the strange sight. He seemed to have found a way to return to his old self. He picked a red fruit and put it in his mouth. A strange thing happened. The boy's ears and nose changed back. And so it was. The boy found a way to get his flying shoes back. And on the other side, the king finally entered the national race. Before the starting gun went off, a bloke walked in with a basket of fruit. He bragged to the king, if you eat this fruit, you'll have all the strength you need to run. Before the king and his men could react, he gave the 3 ministers the yellow fruit for free. It took a while for it to take effect. The king didn't miss his chance. He grabbed the whole basket. He pushed the fruit seller out of the room. Looting seemed to be the king's hobby. He poured it all into his mouth. Since it's good for him, it's all mine. At that moment, the king and his 3 ministers began to change. The transformation was so sudden. Everyone was stunned by the sight. The king had eaten the most fruit. His nose and ears became especially long. The king cried out in desperation for a doctor. But the doctor came and did nothing. The king's nose grew so long. He had never heard of such a long nose. Even when the king got down on his knees and begged him, he couldn't do anything. But it doesn't matter. There is someone who can cure it. It's the same little figure. He came here with a basket of red fruit. First he gave one to each of the 3 ministers. After eating the red fruit, their noses returned to their original state. The king was not happy. He was still trying to grab the fruit. But this time, the short man was prepared. He couldn't get the fruit. The king was at his wit's end. He had to kneel down and beg for mercy. The man didn't say anything to him. He told him he could have the fruit, but he had to take off his shoes and change them. By now, the king had no choice. It's good to have shoes. If you don't change your ears and nose, I'd be a monster who couldn't be accepted. So he had to let the shoes be taken away, and waited for the arrival to reveal its true nature. The king realized, this is the boy whose flying shoes he stole. With his flying shoes, he was not afraid of the king at all. Not only did he strongly condemn the king's greed, and said that in order to punish the king, he won't give him the fruit right away. When the king has changed, he will bring him the fruit. He must bear the consequences of his own mistakes. When the good boy got his flying shoes back, not only will he be able to make a good life for himself, he'll be able to help the people here to live a better life.